Good morning. For the first three stories today, I'm going to go all H2 on you. First of all, Swedish state utility Vattenfall AB plans to convert a recently shuttered, only 5-year-old 1,600 megawatt German coal plant near Hamburg, Germany, into a hub to convert renewables into hydrogen. Vattenfall recently signed a letter of intent with Mitsubishi Heavy Industries and Shell and local utility Wärme Hamburg to determine how to convert the coal plant site into a new plant that includes 100 megawatt of electrolyzers. The site has sufficient grid connections and port facilities so it can be used as a shipping import terminal as well. Also in hydrogen, German industrial conglomerate Thyssen Krupp announced they had secured an order to build an 88 megawatt electrolyzer in Quebec with Hydro-Quebec after an initial feasibility study that's already been completed. This thing will be commissioned in late 2023 and be one of the world's largest green H2 production facilities with expected annual output of around 11,000 tons of hydrogen. Hydrogen has an advantage with these high electrolyzer capacity factors with hydropower because they can be running 24/7. Hydrogen and oxygen produced from this process will be used in a nearby biofuel plant. The third hydrogen story involves Nel, a Norwegian electrolyzer company, which just announced plans to cut the cost of electrolyzers by about 75% in its new 2 gigawatt facility, which will be built in stages and be one of the world's largest. Assuming costs of renewables at around $20 a megawatt hour, they project that will cut the price of green hydrogen to about $1.50 per kilogram by 2025. That puts it on par with gray hydrogen's price right now. The first 500 megawatt line will go in Q2 of this year, and that will cut costs in half. And then as they grow the thing out and optimize design, they expect to cut costs by 50% again. One of Nel's competitors, ITM Power, also started up its new 1 gigawatt electrolyzer factory in England earlier in January, starting with an initial production line of 350 megawatts. So that space is really starting to ramp up. And if we can see those kinds of price reductions, hydrogen might take off in the US as well, especially if the Biden administration moves forward with its many new initiatives. In addition to rejoining Paris and slowing the rollback of the EPA initiatives, the Biden administration is also looking at carbon pricing, which will help it in its benefit cost analyses for certain policies. As part of last week's climate executive order, the federal agencies are now told to review and update their, quote, social cost of carbon, a metric first introduced by the Obama administration at around $50 per ton back then. Then the Trump administration came in and changed that to between $1 and $7 a ton, using a much higher discount rate, essentially your kids don't matter, and limiting assessments only to damage within the United States. So if your kids move overseas, they don't matter either. We'll see what comes of this carbon pricing, but it's likely to exceed the $50 per ton. There are some estimates that it might go as high as $125. And that could change some of the rules that the federal government is moving forward with, especially in the EPA. This will also put more wind into the sails, ultimately, of renewables, which did surprisingly well in COVID-plagued 2020. Bloomberg New Energy Finance reported that investments in all clean energy technologies hit a record $501 billion, so $500 billion in 2020, up 9% over 2019. Companies, governments, and households invested $300 billion in new renewables, about $140 billion on electric vehicles and charging infrastructure. That was up 28% over the prior year. Energy-efficient heat pumps notched $50 billion of sales, and energy storage, a paltry $3.6 billion, but growing really, really quickly. And in the most perhaps unusual big story of last week, the UAE announced it intends to produce aluminum using solar energy. Utility Dubai Electric and Water Authority will supply 560 gigawatt hours annually from its Mohammed bin Rashid Al Maktoum solar park to metals group Emirates Global Aluminum. EGA plans to manufacture a new brand of aluminum, which will be called Celestial. The first year they intend to produce about 40,000 tons of aluminum with scope for significant expansion. Well, those are the stories for this week. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next week. Take care.